Just Joe here, and I've got too many movies. Maybe I should watch one. Okay, we are in the third week of Spielberg Month, and it has been a blast so far. First, I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was I really gotta start watching my language. I really gotta start... No, I don't. It's Spielberg Month. Fan-fucking-tastic was Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fan-fucking-tastic. And then I watched Jaws, another fantastic film. And next up, well, I had two more movies that I wanted to get to for Spielberg Month, and like I said, all four of these movies really kind of came out around the same time, in the mid to late 70s and then the early 80s. Like really Spielberg's hottest time as a director, at least most career defining as a director, where you saw him, become Steven Spielberg. Each movie kept getting better and better and better. So I had a choice to make, and I decided to go with the one that I knew I would probably like, because the other one, I'll just say, I did see when I was a kid, or at least parts of it, but I haven't seen it since then, and for some reason in my head, I have an immense hatred for it. But that'll be next week. This week, for this Friday on Too Many Movies, I've decided to pick the Steven Spielberg classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That is right. Basically, Steven Spielberg's space movie, because he didn't make Star Wars, so we decided to make Close Encounters of the Third Kind, even though... Wait, did this come out before or after Star Wars? Pretty sure it was after. Does it say? Oh wow, it came out about the same time. Weird. Again, I think they had kind of a competition going when it came to their films. It's like, George, if you're gonna do a space movie, then I'm gonna do a space movie, goddammit, you motherfucker! You soon-to-be fat piece of shit! Spielberg had some anger issues. Okay, so anyway, this is Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, still considered one of his greatest film achievements, also either his only film or one of his only films where he wrote and directed it. Steven Spielberg isn't really known as a director. Yes, he is. Steven Spielberg isn't known as a writer, just as a director, and I did not know that he wrote Close Encounters. I figured it was just like the rest of his movies where he just directed it, but he wrote and directed it, so I was excited to finally give this one a chance. I had not seen any of it. I knew about all the classic scenes, I knew it starred Richard Dreyfuss, but that was really about it. The ending wasn't ruined for me, really the majority of the movie wasn't ruined for me, like Raiders of the Lost Ark was or Jaws was, but... does it still hold up to this day? And the problem is, there are now 3 different versions. So him and George Lucas have something in common when it comes to their space epics. There are 3 different versions of Close Encounters. The theatrical version, the special edition, which came out in 1980, a few years after the original, and then the director's cut, which came out in the late 90s. And I looked up and I was like, which one do I should probably just go with the original. And then I was like, well, the special edition does have a little bit more, and it's not like the editions are really that much different. But according to Steven Spielberg, his favorite version of Close Encounters is the director's cut. The original version, he had to take out a lot of stuff. It wasn't the movie that he wanted. The director's cut was the closest it could be to the movie that he wanted to be back in 1977. So I went with the director's cut, just to let you know. Again, there's really... Each movie is about the same length of time. There's not much different. There's stuff taken out, a little bit put in. But the special edition, I know he hated it only because the studio made him show the inside of the spaceship that comes down at the end of the movie. Not really a spoiler alert at all. You kind of know what's going to happen anyway from the very beginning. But... And I agree that shouldn't have been shown. We should never have seen the inside of the spaceship. Well, I can't say anymore. I'll spoil the movie. But I agree with that. Director's cut takes that out. So again, I watched the director's cut. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm excited to give it a try. Not gonna forget my coffee, so here we go to continue Steven Spielberg Month. Bye! Okay, all right, coffee. All right, I just finished up Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Did it live up to the hype? You know, is it one of Steven Spielberg's best? Is it going to be one of my new favorite Steven Spielberg movies? Well, I'm not going to answer that right now. I'll answer at the end of the final thoughts. Let's go ahead and get into it. As always, I start with the plot/script. Okay, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You obviously know from the title it's going to be about Close Encounters, which if you don't know for some reason, Close Encounters refers to like when aliens come and encounter, like with the spaceship, or encounter human beings. Like a human being has a close encounter with an alien, as basically what happens one night. The film starts off with this French guy, and he's with some Americans, and they're out somewhere, basically at a location where a long time ago, some like World War I, World War II pilots were abducted, or so it seems, and one really old person saw what happened. And also like a ship full of people were also taken, and they're investigating it. And then in Indiana, which is my backyard, or not really my backyard, it's there's a window here, it's right out there. But in Muncie, Indiana, which I don't live, by the way, stalkers, just so you know. Stop calling me. But in Muncie, Indiana, this woman on a farm or whatever, because you know it's Indiana, everyone here is a farmer, I guess, but her one night she has a close encounter, and her little boy like runs out in the field and basically just keeps running, but there are alien ships all around Indiana that come in contact with people. One of those people is Richard Dreyfuss, a family man with 3 kids and a wife, played by Terry Garr actually, which I'll get to later, but did not know she was in this movie. That was a nice surprise. And he has a close encounter when he's out, he's an electrician, and he's out trying to figure out why everyone's lights are going so funky and going out. And the reason is because of all these close encounters. The alien ships are flying above. He has a close encounter, like half of his face is kind of sunburnt along with other people. And eventually he meets this group of people that had the close encounters with the aliens. And it kind of goes back and forth between the regular people who had the close encounters. Richard Dreyfuss starts to honestly kind of lose his mind. He's in his dreams and in his thoughts. Everyone who had these close encounters see like a big mountain or a big structure. They just see it and they don't know what it means, and it's driving him insane. It's driving his family insane, and the army is trying to make contact with the aliens again. And yeah, that's the plot. I didn't want to go into too much more detail because, you know, I don't want to ruin too much for anyone who hasn't seen it. But that really is the plot of Close Encounters, and what I'm happy about, I was worried like all these people, they wouldn't be believed about their close encounters. Now people kind of see them a little bit as crazy, or they're losing their minds, who didn't encounter this, but who didn't encounter the encounters. But basically luckily that has nothing to do with the movie. It's not about like the government saying you're crazy, you're wrong, blah blah blah, you didn't see that. It's not even really about the government covering it up in a way. They're kind of trying to protect people, and they know what's going on. They're not really trying to hide the fact, they're just trying to protect these people, and they don't want them to get involved. So the story did not go where I thought it was going to go. The script for this, Steven Spielberg was the sole writer. He did a great job. I'm not going to say the script is a home run. That's really not what the movie is about. The movie isn't really about the dialogue. I'm not going to say like the script was bad. The script wasn't bad at all. The script was very good. It just wasn't like a knockout script or anything like that. When you watch Close Encounters, it's about the acting, it's about the directing, it's about the visuals, all that I'll get to, you know, later. But the script for this, considering that Steven Spielberg really isn't a script writer, it's very good. And he doesn't go into, it's not exposition heavy, you know, explains when it needs to explain, but it never felt like exposition to me. You know, the dialogue with the characters, there doesn't really feel like there's a shit ton of dialogue, which I like. It's all about atmosphere, which would have been written in the script. So Steven Spielberg put together, you know, a great script, but really the movie came together because of everything else. But still, if this is really Steven Spielberg's only credit as a screenwriter, especially a sole one, he did a damn good job. All right, next up, I talk about the cast/lead characters. All right, the cast in this, it stars Richard Dreyfuss, who He's a phenomenal actor. You know, he really is. One of my all-time favorites. He's always good. And I loved him in Jaws. I loved him in this. And he, you know, this is a big year for him. Like, he was in Close Encounters, and he also won an Academy Award for The Goodbye Girl. Another movie that I really want to see, but don't have it in my collection yet. So I promise, Richard, I'm gonna get there, Dick Dreyfuss. That is definitely a porn name. So anyway, he does a great job with his character, really showing how he's losing his mind, and he starts to get really pathetic and sad. I like how he never gets angry at his family. He never plays it as where he's pissed off at them. He's not even really pissed off, he just wants answers. And he really wants some sympathy from his wife, Terry Garr. A surprise in this movie, I did not know she played his wife. And she does, as always, such an underrated actress from back then. I wish she was in bigger movies. She was in this, she was in Tootsie, she was in Young Frankenstein. I mean, she's got a great track record. I just wish that I feel like she's not as remembered as much. I wish she would have won an Academy Award. She was nominated, I think, only once for Tootsie, which, honestly, I think she should have won over Jessica Lange and Tootsie. But I'm getting off track. But anyway, she's angry and she's mad at her husband. You know, he loses his job and doesn't care. He's making mashed potato mountains, and we've all seen that scene. You know, and we all know that scene's been parodied to death. And she portrays the almost grieving wife for her husband, even though her husband hasn't died. She's grieving for the man he used to be, even though it seemed like their marriage really wasn't in great shape. Spielberg did a great job kind of subtly showing that their relationship just was not clicking, not really working. It didn't involve a lot of dialogue or a lot of fighting. From the very start, it just wasn't. You know, it actually taught me a lot about how to write subtly for a movie. And even the little kids, their kids are good actors. The oldest son, he does a great job. He's really good at the crying stuff. But that whole family dynamic was great. And then, of course, we have like the U.S. Army people, the scientists, and the Frenchman. The guy who plays the Frenchman, he did a great job. Like, really, the whole cast does a great job in this. The woman from Muncie, Indiana, with her son, she got nominated for like Best Supporting Actress. I don't really understand why. She did a great job. I didn't think Academy Award nomination great, but again, maybe I'm just missing something. But she was fantastic in this. She actually looked a lot like Kate Capshaw, which would be Steven Spielberg's future wife after they met on Temple of Doom, so I thought that was kind of weird. But she is great in this. That's really it when it comes to the cast. It's not like a large there's a lot of people, but the focus doesn't stay on them very long, minus Richard Dreyfuss and like his family, and of course the farmer woman who got nominated for Academy Award. But the entire cast, you know, it was cast near perfect, and it was great. And same for the characters. Like, the characters were all written very well. I never saw any of them as being fake. I believed their circumstances. I believed their intentions. I believed when they were angry. I believed when they were sad. You know, they were very well-written characters and not overly written. Although maybe they could have been written a little bit more. But, you know, all the cast members, they complimented the characters. The characters complimented the cast members. I'm running out of things to say when it comes to that. But cast and characters, bueno. Alright, last but certainly not least is the directing, editing, and the music. It's Steven Spielberg. What do you want me to say? This was his first Academy Award nomination for Best Director came for Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it didn't. It actually came for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which it's very funny, because Jaws, he didn't get a nomination, he should have, but he got nominated for Best Picture. This, he did get a nomination, but it did not get nominated for Best Picture, which how cool would it have been, because he would have been up against Star Wars. And the award went to Annie Hall, Woody Allen's, you know, comedy masterpiece, but it would have been cool, I think it should have been nominated. This was even to this day, is such a clever movie. And the direction in this, it's Spielberg. And honestly, Close Encounters showed a maturity from Jaws. There are so many amazing shots that he gets, the sets, the backgrounds, the special effects in this, and I'm sure it was cleaned up. I have the Blu-ray of it. I'm sure it was cleaned up in the special edition, director's cut, but it's still, you know, they're actual sets. You know, I'm sure there's some blue screen and stuff like that, but, or matte paintings or whatever, but they look great. And the spaceships and their actual, it's like Star Wars, the original trilogy, they're models, they look real. And just the lighting and the sound and everything, everything blends together so brilliantly. But Steven Spielberg's direction, what I took away from Close Encounters is, like, to me, this is when it finally, like, fully clicked for him. He was already a brilliant director, but Close Encounters, he really found new ways to play in his playground, if you know what I mean. Like, he just could see things no other director could see, and he could get the shots no other director could shoot. So Steven Spielberg, once again, you earned that nomination. The editing, this is very well edited together. Again, I saw the director's cut, so eventually I would like to just watch all three just to see what the differences are, but it'll probably be a while before I do that. But, you know, the editing in this, the movie is about 2 hours, 17 minutes, 2 hours, 15 minutes, and it flowed fantastic. It never felt slow, even in the beginning. Even in the first few scenes where they would usually drag, kind of trying to explain everything, the movie flowed very well. It did not feel like over 2 hours at all, so the editing was great. And the music has like this alien type feel to it, this sci-fi feel, but it fits this movie so well. So well. It blends, it makes it, you know, even feel like an action adventure type of movie, but with that sci-fi feel. You know, not nearly as brilliant as like the music in Star Wars. That's a space opera. This is not a space opera. This is set in the real world on Earth. But the music and the little music they use to communicate with the spacecraft, and again, we've all seen those scenes parodied in a lot of movies and TV shows. But that stuff is great. Sound quality is great. The music is fantastic. Actually, I wonder if I can reach this. Did John Williams do this too? Of course he did, because he's fucking brilliant. Good job, Johnny boy. Good job. Also, just a special note, again, for the special effects. Good God. I mean, just how everything is real. All the sets are real. And also seeing like old TV and old commercials and stuff like that, I love that. You know, just to see stuff from the 70s or 80s or 90s. Even now, the early 2000s, it's nostalgic. But regardless of that, because I'm a nostalgia whore. But the special effects with the models, the lights on the models, you could tell how much love and passion went into this stuff. And it's not like it's only there for a minute. At the end of the movie, it's everywhere. It takes over the movie, and it looks phenomenal. I'm sure they cleaned it up. But Steven Spielberg is not as picky as George Lucas. Like, he changed some things, but this is one of his few movies he went back and did that with. If possibly the only one. Because he didn't get to release the movie he wanted to release. And that is frustrating for a director. Like for the movie Alien and Aliens, Ridley Scott and James Cameron did not get to release the full movie they wanted to, so they came out with the director's cuts. I prefer the director's cuts because the stuff that they put in, I think, is extremely necessary for the Alien movies, for both of them. And for Close Encounters, the director's cut, I can't think of anything that was unnecessary. Everything felt right. But anyway, the special effects, even to this day, are top-notch, and it proves that even though CG is necessary and is useful, it still does not look nearly as cool as stuff like this, because even though a CG spaceship may look more realistic sometimes, or even a little bit cooler, the fact that we can tell that it's a model, even though it looks very real, adds to the charm of the movie. And I think that's a big thing missing from movies nowadays. They cannot say they can't afford it. They can't. Even, especially for big budget movies. You can afford it. It's just more time consuming, that's why you don't want to do it. But audiences appreciate the effort, and this fan of movies appreciates the effort in this movie. Alright, so my final thoughts. What did I feel about it? I love this movie. Go figure. I loved this movie. It's again like Jaws, it's not going to be a Steven Spielberg movie that I'm going to rewatch all the time. It's not going to be a Raiders, or Last Crusade. It's not even going to be, I'm trying to think of other, a Saving Private Ryan, or other Steven Spielberg movies that I just love to rewatch. Catch Me If You Can. You know, I love that movie. I rewatched that one. And Catch Me If You Can is not nearly as classic as Close Encounters or Jaws, but, you know, I love that movie. But I see this being a rewatch every year, just like Jaws. This is something I would love to rewatch and it's a subject matter with Alien Close Encounters. I think it was done maturely. It wasn't making fun of people who have thought that, because who knows if it's real or not? We don't know. It doesn't make sense, and I'm not some, you know, conspiracy theorist or something like that, but it doesn't make sense that we're the only people in the damn universe, or that there haven't been close encounters of the third kind, you know, in actual life. We don't know. But I like how this wasn't making fun of that subject matter. It was doing it in a very mature way, and I haven't seen that really done since. You know, a lot of comedy spoofs have done stuff like that, but this was done in a mature manner to where you're like, wow, this really could happen. And it made it interesting, and it didn't become a big conspiracy movie with the US government or anything like that, or make these people out to where they were crazy. They just wanted answers. But as a movie, at least the director's cut, flows very well. I see why this was so highly rated. It probably is one of Steven Spielberg's best. Probably still in his top 5. Like I said, the streak that dude was on in the mid-70s to like the mid-90s, good lord, like 20 years of these classic movies that will all be in the film registry, National Film Registry. Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and, you know, Schindler's List, The Color Purple, all this stuff. It's ridiculous, and he's still making good movies. But he helped redefine cinema, and Close Encounters shows that with its, you know, I'm not gonna say the characters are like classic or memorable, or the dialogue is. There's really not any memorable dialogue in this. No classic lines or anything. What people remember is how they felt watching it, and that's what I will always remember. The biggest thing I'll remember is, to me, it showed how much Steven Spielberg matured as a director. Like, this is the movie where it really clicked for him that you could make something weird but make it fantastic and make it memorable. And, you know, but the special effects, the direction, the cinematography, the music, the acting, everything just came together to make a wonderful movie. It flows extraordinarily well. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Maybe not as much as other people. Again, it's not like something it'll stick with me for a little bit, but, you know, again, it's some of these movies, you had to see these when they first came out, and I wanted to say this, that's the unfortunate thing about these movies. It's very rare for a movie to be like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where even 30 years later, you get that feeling like you just saw it in the theater for the first time in 1980 or 81, even though it's 30 years later. People had that with Jaws. I didn't have that watching it at home. People had that with Close Encounters. I didn't. And it's probably because there have been a lot of other movies kind of similar to these that I've already seen. So it just doesn't hit you here the same way. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it, or you can't love it, because it is amazing for a reason. Because it's Steven Spielberg, and he knows what the hell he's doing, because the dude was on a hot streak, and Close Encounters is great. So I give Close Encounters of Just Joe rating a 4 out of 5. So thank you very much for tuning in to Too Many Movies with me, Just Joe. Links in the description below to my Facebook page, my Twitter, Instagram, the podcast I'm sometimes on with my buddy Jake. If I already said Facebook page, I don't know if I did, but Facebook page. Subscribe to me at YouTube on Apartment B1 Productions. Every single Friday, I do a movie for my collection, and that I've never seen before. And next week, I will do the last when it comes to Steven Spielberg Month. And since Thanksgiving is going to happen before that, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope you have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Stay warm, eat a lot of food, and then pass out for the whole weekend. That's what I plan to do as well. So I look forward to next Friday to finish out Steven Spielberg Month, and then we're closer to Christmas. And yes, I will be doing Christmas movies all December. I'll go ahead and say it. But like I said, every single Friday, watch out for a new Too Many Movies. I'll have more Too Many Movies at the movies coming up in the coming months, at least a couple of them. And yeah, and there you go. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Coffee. Quiet on the set.